Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, George Almasri. On this episode, I interviewed Jas Takhar. Jas is a real estate agent and investor, and he's got a pretty cool story. He's actually investing in pre-construction condos exclusively, as far as I know. So we talked about that because obviously in this day and age, a lot of people are getting burned by investing in pre-con. So he talked about how he was able to maneuver through certain challenges, having to give up certain things in order to make things work, but also just his mindset around investing and how he's been able to acquire several properties over the last, I believe it was 10 years or so. So it's a really cool way to look at things, and actually the right way to look at things if you are looking to invest in pre-construction condos. So I think you're going to get some good value from this. He also talked about what you can do if you are kind of stuck in a position where maybe you bought something from a builder 2-3 years ago and you're having trouble closing on it today, and some experiences that he's having with clients and what he's recommending that they do. So I hope you guys will enjoy the episode. Please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. That would be greatly appreciated. And you can download some free reports. So if you go to www.welloff.ca/podcast, there's a bunch of free stuff that you can download. And last thing, I'm happy to connect with you. If you are looking to invest in real estate, specifically multi-units, I'd be happy to have a conversation and help guide you in the right direction. So you can also book a call with me on the website. There you go. Enjoy the episode. All right, I'm here with Jas. Jas, it's the first time we meet. Thank you for coming by. And I'd like to start off by just asking you a little bit about your childhood. So if you want to tell me about where you grew up, a couple things you remember.
100%, man. First and foremost, though, I appreciate you having me on. Am I as good looking in person as I am online?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I am. All right, cool.
Just as good
we'll
as...
let your viewers actually, comment and vote on it. In terms of childhood, it's funny, man. Driving here, I actually grew up about 5 minutes away from here on the south side of Woodbridge, which is essentially the north part of Toronto, Rexdale. Yeah. So 5 minutes away from here. I spent a lot of time in and around this neighborhood. My movie theater was down the street. I had a pretty cool childhood. Growing up in Rexdale, it's always, the place that people say, put up your windows, lock your doors. But I was sheltered from that because of my parents. And my two older brothers who really parented me more than my parents. But my father was a taxi driver his whole life. My mother was a factory worker her whole life. And just watching them pinch pennies, but at the same time, let me know that no matter what, because of what my grades in school and getting called from the principal, my parents were on a regular basis. They always told me that, look, just try a little bit harder, but at the end of the day, you're going to find your thing. And that thing for me was sales and service. As a 6-year-old, I was the first kid to put up his hand to help with the book sale, the Christmas ornaments, door to door. Looking back, a lot of it probably had to do with the fact that I just didn't learn in that setting. I wanted to get out of class and not sit there. But at 12, knocked on so many doors, around 5 minutes away from where we are right now, that gave me some confidence, right? But on the flip side, it also helped me dealing with rejection. Because you would knock on people's doors and they wouldn't answer, or they would say, like, get out of here, don't ever come back. But it was never really worse than that. And so I think that served me very well now being in the real estate business for 20 years. But in between that period, I've also sold cars for 3-4 years at a very high level. I was in the banking industry. So it's all kind of part and parcel in terms of how I grew up, because it's helped me now. And now leading a team of a little over 42 agents, having a support staff of 13 people for my real estate company. I have a coaching academy for real estate agents and mortgage brokers. I'm really a kid living out a dream. And I know people say that, and someone who's taking their dog for a walk right now or driving in a car, they're like, oh, like, this thing again. But it's true, man. Like I am so blessed because I was told a lot by teachers, right? And I had some fantastic teachers as well that said, you're going to find your thing, just like my parents were telling me. But I just had a lot of teachers telling me that there was something wrong with me and we should drug this kid. But at the end of the day, I get to now design my businesses around my life, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with you, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know, as you mentioned at the intro, like we never met in person, and who knows what's going to happen with this relationship, right? Like, you live in the area that I live in now, not too far from where we're you know, apart from each other, and you just never know where that relationship's going to go, right? So it's kind of cool. I think a lot of people start with, I don't want to try something new, or I don't want to get outside my comfort zone. I'm here to tell everyone who's listening, it doesn't matter if you're a real estate investor, a possible first-time home buyer, somebody who's in the business, everything you want in your life is slightly outside your comfort zone. Because if it was easy, then everyone would do it. So you have to find a way to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's in all aspects of life. Again, parenting and investing. I mean, investing, and you know this more than anyone, brother. And I'm sure your viewers and listeners have heard this before, but for the people who haven't, I mean, investing into real estate's a big jump, man. Like, you know, it's not for everyone. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme or an easy way to make money quickly. It really truly is the guaranteed get wealthy strategy if you have the patience. But there's moments when you're starting out and when you're in it that are going to make you uncomfortable. If you're an investor who likes income properties, for example, you got to deal with tenants. There's some uncomfortable situations with that. Getting financing, dealing with negative cash flow. Like, there's all these things that you have to be able to get comfortable with. And so that's it, man. That's kind of my upbringing, man.
That's great. I'm glad to hear a little bit more about you. And speaking of your upbringing, so you said your dad was a taxi driver, your mom worked in a factory. When did you buy your first rental property, and how did that happen?
Oh, that happened, I mean, pretty later on in, and nothing to do with my parents. My parents, from the perspective of, they're not investors, so there's not an entrepreneurial a drop of blood in my parents. In all honesty, they gave me everything that I have right now in terms of confidence and love, but them taking risks and stuff, that wasn't their thing. You know, taxi driver and factory worker, so the household income, I don't know, it couldn't have been more than 70 grand or something, you know, 75,000 maybe. And they had 3 boys, and us 3 boys, we didn't have nothing, but we also didn't have everything. You know, it was more of, luckily all 3 of us chose soccer as the sport, because that's not that expensive. And we just had a love for it that my parents, watching them, what I really learned from my parents, and I'm going to answer your question about the income properties and starting investing, but what I really learned from my parents was something that I think people need to still go back to now in 2024, which was saving money. I think it's a lost art, right? There's a place for leveraging. There's a place for not leaving money in your bank account because it's going to get lost with inflation. But I just think there's so many people who have not executed on saving money, because you need to save for rainy days. And so what I realized quickly was, there's a gentleman on our street who I saw shovel the snow in the winter as well as cut the grass, but not of one home, of like 6. And so I never really understood it. And I spoke to him and I was like, oh, like, do you do this as a business? Like, you landscape? And he's like, no, I own these properties and I rent them out. And that is what I probably got that information from him around 18, 19 years old. And I said, that's kind of cool. So like, you rent them out and they pay you rent. And it was just an older Italian gentleman that was talking to me about it. And then I got licensed at 23 years old. So approximately,
like real estate license.
License. Yeah. And I actually got my license because I thought it was going to teach me how to invest into real estate. I quickly learned it has nothing to do with that. But then I kept it because I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I can kind of marry two of my ambitions. One is to be like, I want to get on the top rung of the ladder when it comes to sales. Like real estate is going to be someone's biggest purchase. And I've done all the other things in sales, and I want to do this investing thing. So I might as well just keep the license, keep going at it. And so my first income property was bought at 28 years old.
Okay.
And it was a condo downtown Toronto, small, 600 square feet. I bought that in 2010, and I bought that for $339,000, one bedroom. It's at the corner of King and Strawn. I still own it. And it's probably, market's gone up, market's gone down. At the peak, it went to 780 grand. Right now, as we sit off the top of my head, it's probably flirting around 680 or something like that off the top of my head. But here's the magic with it. The magic has been that I've refinanced that property 2 times at a little over 120 grand each, which then I took that 120 grand each. At one point, I bought my current principal residence with that 120,000. The second time, I bought another income property in Florida. So that is what I'm trying to get across to everyone. The 339,000 and the 680,000, that's great. Fantastic. However, the magic of investing into real estate, which you cannot do with any other investments, is leveraging it, because other people want to give you money, mainly other people being banks and lenders. And then I've been able to use that money tax-free. I didn't pay any tax on that money because I never sold this property, and was able to acquire my principal residence, which I probably bought at 750 grand about 5-6 years ago. It's currently worth, off the top of my head, I'm going to say about 1.5 or 1.6 or something. My Florida property, out of that same first condo, I would have purchased that for about 450 grand, and that's probably worth 550. Currently. And so that's kind of the magic, man. But I learned it from just seeing someone doing it at a very basic level, right? There is so many strategies within investing into real estate, and there's so many people, and I'm sure you've had guests on as well, and there's nothing wrong with this by any means, that have 98 doors or 632 doors is kind of the term that people use, right, in investing into real estate. I'm here to tell everyone, more importantly, just get one. Like, one will change your life. Because in the most basic way possible, if you look at it from this perspective, it's how you're guaranteed to create wealth. If you buy a property today, I don't care what it's worth. Off the top of my head, just let's buy, for giggles, let's use an $800,000 property, okay? You look back in the last 100 years in the GTA, so there's a massive sample size. Every decade, values have doubled on average. Sometimes it's happened in, we just went through a run that it happened in like 5 years. And sometimes it might take 12 years. But let's just say, on average, it's going to double. In 20 years, and this is going to sound like I'm on some type of drug, okay? But I got black and white numbers to prove this. You buy that property today. In 20 years, there's a really good chance that property is going to be worth $3.2 million.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Insane, but that's exactly what happens. But let's just shrink it down, not to the 20 years. Let's think about 10 years. There's a really good chance that that property is going to be worth $1.6 million. Now, understand that when I was saying this 10 years ago about the $400,000 property that's now worth $800,000, there's a silent killer called inflation. That $800,000 is not going to be $800,000 today is not what it was 10 years ago. 1.6 million in 10 years from now is not going to be what 1.6 million is worth right now. However, if you rented it out and someone else paid for it in that 10 years, your mortgage is not completely paid off yet. It's why I generally like to use the 20-year mark, because in 20 years that's going to be paid off. And you don't have to do anything fancy. Don't get caught up in everything that you hear on your podcast, other podcasts, social media. I've said it as well on social media as well. Like refinance. I said it today. Refinance it, buy more. You don't have to worry about any of that. Just imagine that property's paid off in 20 years and you're just collecting the rent because there's no expense on it other than property tax. The tenant's going to be paying for all the utilities and everything. I have a funny feeling, and I'm glad that this is recorded, that in 20 years, we might not even have any type of pension. And so at least you protected yourself by just getting one. Mm-hmm. And that first one, as daunting as it may seem, if you go through it with a professional like yourself, you're going to walk through that whole process with people. Probably right to the end in terms of, let me find you a tenant. Mm-hmm. Right? So it could be a fully turnkey investment, a fully turnkey process for someone. And you don't need to make it this huge, elaborate portfolio. If your ambitions are bigger, fantastic. That's great. However, just one property can change the course of someone's life, because I wish my parents, for all that they gave me, God, I wish they bought one more. Mm-hmm. Right? Because that one more, my brothers and I, we would have kept renting it out, and our wealth and our portfolio would have been larger. It wasn't in the cards. That's okay. But for everyone else right now, and I'll even go as far as saying this, brother, that if you're a renter right now, nothing wrong with staying a renter for the rest of your life. I know that, like, I'm an agent and we get paid when people buy stuff, but I'm here to say, even if you're a renter, there's nothing wrong with staying as a renter for the rest of your life. I get it. You compare it to buying, you're paying more, but there's some advantages in being a renter. You don't have to really care about the property as much. There's no maintenance. You don't need to put down a down payment of 10%. Like, I know you could buy as low as 5%, but mortgages are hard to come by with 5%. So 10% on 800,000, that's an $80,000 down payment plus closing. It's about 100 G's. What I have to recommend to that renter, though, that if you don't become an investor / landlord, then I think you're wrong completely. Meaning, stay where you live, you don't need to own. Just make sure that you buy a property that you rent out, because then you can create that wealth, mm-hmm. right? So yeah, man, I mean, as I said to you off the record, I kind of go off on tangents sometimes. So I know you'll bring me back.
Yeah,
I got a lot of passion for people creating wealth for themselves, because unfortunately, I don't care if it's the red government, the blue government, this new reddish orange government that's out there, they're not going to do shit. They're just not. There's not going to be any money for people at the end. Mm-hmm. They're in it for themselves. I'm not even saying it's wrong. I'm not getting into that political kind of conversation. But if you, when you're 60 or 70, if you have no money left because now the government decided that, sorry, we don't have any here, but I've been paying into it, Mr. and Mrs. Government, they're going to say, we don't give a crap, bro. Like, it was just a new rule. We made it up.
Yeah.
You can only look at yourself in the mirror, because right now you're listening to this and you're listening to other podcasts and watching other YouTube videos, and people are doing it. You have the opportunity. I just don't want people to think that they have to get some building that's 8 units or 57 units. You can do this all with one simple little property with an upstairs and a downstairs, a 1-bedroom condo. You know, like yep. In my example, it's 650 square feet, man. It's not, it's, you know, some would call it a shoebox, but the tenant pays on time, and it's all my expenses are paid. It's nicely covered and it's easy.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned before we started recording that you have a portfolio and you built it through pre-construction condos. Basically, you bought pre-construction condos, and that's a bit of a hot topic now because a lot of people got burned. You hear about people not being able to close on their pre-con. A lot of people in the last couple of years bought expecting prices to increase, and that didn't happen. Rates went up, prices went down. So what are your thoughts on that, and how were you able to build your portfolio successfully and ways that other people have failed.
Yeah, so my overall thesis on investing into real estate is 10-year windows. I just went through the whole... I'm sure people caught that. Like I kept saying 10 years. There's even examples I used of 20. So I won't make an investment, in all honesty, into a business or into real estate unless it's a 10-year window. Why? Because I know that it takes time. And within the 10 years, that data about investing into real estate has always shown us that values have gone up and they come down, but they go up and down upwards. That's for sure. You look at it over a 40-year mark in the greater Toronto area where we sit today, and mostly I think it's safe to say where most of your listeners and viewers are and your clients are. In 40 years, values have appreciated 7.3% year over year. But someone's listening right now and saying, this guy's an idiot because it only increased 1% last year or 2%. I know, but I said on average, year over year, it increases 7.2. It's why we also had a 22% increase 1 year, 2021 to 2022. I think it was about 21%. On average, in a 10-year window, for the last 40 years in the GTA, we have seen the 7.2% increase. So for me, personally, anytime I bought a pre-construction condo, I've always looked at it at, even the ones that I'm closing on, like I just closed on one 2 days ago. Okay, it's in occupancy. I shouldn't say I closed on it because it's not, I haven't had to get the mortgage yet. It's in occupancy, which is the first stage of closing with a pre-con. That the value that I expected is not there, but I'm not worried because the value that I expected for when I was closing is not there. Now, it's going to get appraised at how much I need to close on and get the mortgage for. But I've also only looked at it, the real value is the 10-year value. So I bought that condo probably for about $500,000. I bought that 3 years ago. I know from closing, not from when I bought it, at closing to 10 years from then, it's going to be worth $1 million. It's just, I bought in a great location. I bought in Port Credit. It's facing the lake. It's a 1-bedroom condo again. And I know it's going to be worth $1 million because on the high end, it already went to 750. It just dropped right now. So to the people who were expecting, majority of those guys and gals, not all of them, majority of them, they bought it to flip it. To use one of the strategies in pre-construction is a strategy called an assignment, selling it before it closes. Check all my social media for the last 5 years, bro. I've been telling people, if you're buying a pre-con with only wanting to assign it, you have the possibility, it's not like I knew that what was going to happen with values, but you have the possibility of losing your shirt. Why? Because you're speculating. I'm going to Vegas to speak at Inman next week for the real estate agent conference. I might as well just pick black or red. Like take that 100 G's and just put it on black or red. If you're just, it's going to be worth, it's pure speculation. And so to the people who have gone through that now, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't feel good. So you got some options though. One is boo-hoo. Sit in the corner and cry. I told you real estate could be uncomfortable. Or you can say, okay, I got to change some of my parts of my lifestyle. Sorry, man, maybe you can't go out for steak dinners 4 times a week. Maybe you can't go on as many trips now because you have to cover that negative cash flow. That's what I'm doing. I can probably afford, I'm going to say, any normal car, aside from supercars, i.e. Bugattis and shit like that, I can probably afford any car that I would want because you lease the friggin' thing for a couple of $1,000 a month. I drive a $15,000 Camry. I sold my expensive car because I knew I was going to be into negative cash flow in some of my properties. I'm not going to lose my asset or my ass. I'm going to get rid of something that's a depreciating value, which is a car. Mm-hmm. Sorry, honey, at home, maybe we don't do the organic strawberries every friggin' time. Mm-hmm. The kids will be fine.
Yeah,
we'll get back to that when we get to it. When we have some more discretionary spending, like we can actually spend some of the money. So If you can't close on it, I think the person that you bought it with, you might need to go back to them and see if, like, did they push you to buy this? I did, in the last 4 years, probably about 1,200 units with clients. I'm not here to impress anybody with that number. It's more to impress upon you where this data is coming from. There's not one client who's calling me and yelling at me because I told them everything up front. Don't buy this with the thoughts of assigning it. You need to get a mortgage on this in 4 years. Please don't go buy Lamborghinis and go spend money on dumb shit. Please. Okay? When you go buy another property in that time period, Mr. and Mrs. Investor who's buying this pre-construction condo, knowing that you need to close on it, please don't forget that you have to get this mortgage as well. Now, hence why not one call, and my viewers and listeners are, like, my community will listen to this. None of them are going to come out and say, Jas pushed me to buy something. I gave you all the information up front. Now, we're here to help and serve people. What does that mean? Well, what we're doing for our clients, and so if you're watching right now and you're somebody who can't close on a property, I need you to start raising capital. Start reaching out to friends and family. Because your option with the builder in that situation is going to be, they're going to keep your deposit. Right? And so if you give a deposit of already 20%, call it 100, 120 grand, 150 grand, it makes no sense to lose that money. Like,
how would they approach a family member or a friend with that? Like,
I think that's a great question.
Yeah, like, because it's not a good situation. It's not like, there's an opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity here. It's kind of like a bad thing that happened, but you need to be saved. So how do you approach it?
So look at the truth, right? Mr. and Mrs. Family member, I'm the investor. I bought a condo for 500 grand. I was expecting it to be worth 700. I put 20% down. It's $100,000. I already put the money down. I can't close on it. Now, it depends on why you can't close on it. A couple of the main reasons: can't get the mortgage. They can't qualify for it. Some situations, they didn't put the full 20% down yet. And so there's maybe still another 10% down. So depending on the situation, but I think the approach is the same, which is, I can't close on this. And so would you want to be a partner with me on this deal? I will bring you in. I need the financing aspect taken care of. Are you down to take 25%? Well, 25% of what? You have no equity. The value, you bought it for 500, it's still worth 500 in the worst case scenario. Well, the upside. So I only want you to, Mr. and Mrs. Family member, get involved with me if you're looking at this for the next 10 years. And in the next 10 years, the upside on this, I will give you 25%. It's not enough. I want 35. Great. You're in a negotiation now. That's easy, right? Now we can just figure that number out. Personally, I would give up 50%. Because it's better than me losing out on 100% of my deposit.
Yep.
Right? And so the time right now is a little tough for real estate. Just today, right now that we sit in. But I never heard any of these guys and gals saying anything when they were buying them, closing on them, flipping them, and making 100 G's. Like, I didn't hear any of these murmurs. Nobody was saying shit. Now that, the values have dropped a little, it's not like we've never seen this before. Like, if this happened with Bitcoin, and I got nothing against Bitcoin, I don't personally invest into it. Not because I'm against it by any means. I just haven't gotten around to it. I actually think it's something that people should look at as well, because I think it's here to stay. But that would be like, we don't have as much historical data on something like Bitcoin. With real estate, we have so much historical data. Guys, values have gone down before. They've gone down in the GTA. Just look at the 94, 95 year to, I'll call it 92, to about 98. It was a 6-year low. But taking that 8-year period and looking at it in the 40-year window I spoke about a couple of minutes ago, we still have seen values increase over time, right? So I think that the best way to approach a family member, a friend, somebody that you don't know, how do you approach somebody that you don't know, by the way, in case you don't have family and friends? or you've tapped out on the family and friends, is join investment groups. Get out there. This is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. There is options. I just don't think the one good option of being reactive is not a good strategy in anything in life. Go be proactive. Because unfortunately, nobody really gives a crap about your complaining. And I don't mean that to be harsh with people. It's just the friggin' truth.
Yep.
Nobody really cares because they got their own friggin' problems, right? And so I think when you can wrap your head around that, you become more solution-oriented than just only talking about problems and thinking about problems. And then a funny thing happens, right? Like will always attract like. And so if your vibration and frequency that you're putting out there is of one that is positive, you're going to attract more positivity into your life. I don't care if you believe it in or not. It's like gravity. It will always do its thing. And so you gotta, when reaching out to people, don't lie, tell them the truth. It's a numbers game. In sales, it's a numbers game. With investors, it's a numbers game. Dating, it's a numbers game. Don't try to convince people. Because I get the call as well, right? Like, bro, how do I convince my family? I'm like, well, that's the wrong mindset right away. You're trying to convince people. Just sort. Talk to as many people as you possibly can. There will be somebody who's like, you know what? I don't have the 100 G's to put down. I never had. I suck at saving. But bro, man, I got 860 credit score and the banks want to lend me money all the time. I'm down. I'll do that with you. But if you haven't spoken to enough people, then you don't really deserve it. And it's something that I tell everyone, my kids, anybody who would listen. You can't be mad at yourself for the results you didn't get for the work you didn't do. You get what I'm saying? So you can't be mad at yourself for the results that you didn't get for the work you didn't do, meaning that if you didn't get anybody to possibly joint venture with you in that example because you never spoke to anyone, well, then how are you going to be mad at yourself? You don't deserve the friggin' thing.
Yep. How many kids do you have, by the way?
I got two, man. I got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
10-year-old and an 8-year-old?
Yeah.
And what are you hoping for them? Are you hoping that they'll kind of take on the family business and do what you're doing and invest and do all that? Or
no, not really. I've never really even thought about it. I think both of them definitely have a little bit of the jazz DNA. Not only physically, but I know they're my kids because I just know the way that they act around us and behave. But I think they both have the possibility of taking over. Like, they have charisma. I think that's what the word I was looking for. But in all honesty, man, I just need them to be kind. That's all I'm looking for. Like, I just want them to be. I think that's probably the best compliment I've ever gotten from my elders and people that I'm around. Like, I got a big crew around me at my office, and some of them are newer. But what means a lot to me is what they say. But what even means more to me is what my uncles say, and people that have been in my life a long time, is we've just been respectful and kind, and that's always attracted very neat people in our lives. And I want my kids to have that. They're growing up in definitely a different time, which we did. Everyone says that, right? Like, when you get older, it's we used to walk 77 miles in the snow. I'm not trying to say that.
Yep.
But it feels a little different. Like, what they're going through and what they have access to. My 10-year-old is listening to songs that I don't know where he's getting it from. You know what I mean? And we kind of have it monitored, but it's still getting to him, right? I was talking about this with a colleague of mine, which was our songs were different. When I was 10 years old, it would have been 1991, I guess, right? Yeah. We had more slow jams and stuff like that. But now you hear some of these songs and some of the words that they're saying, that what I'm trying to protect them from is that, but I just need them to be kind. They take over the business. I don't know. Whatever they do, I think they just need to do. Here's a direct answer for you, and I don't think I've ever said it online. I just want them to do it with passion. I think what I'm winning at, not from any accolade, not my bank account, nothing that's said on social media, how I wake up every morning and how I feel is that I get to do something that makes me happy. Like, I'm a pig in you know what sitting here doing this right now. Like, I love it. You know what I mean? I love myself. Like, not from a narcissistic perspective. It's I fill my cup up every day so I can hopefully give to other people because it's overflowing. I want them to do something. Like, you want to friggin' make tables, just be the best table maker you can be. You want to, be a filmmaker, be the best filmmaker. You want to get into this business, have at it, man. Like, let's go. Let's do this. It would be kind of cool. I could do it with them, but it's not something that I ever really think about.
Yeah. If we go back to what we were talking about just before this, actually, so the pre-construction stuff, do you also help people get into freehold, multi-units?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And have you seen people are maybe gravitating more towards that lately because there's more opportunity for cash flow for that sort of thing?
100%. So we're a full service company, first time home buyers, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to investors, it's land development, pre-construction, income properties from the perspective of what I call the Brampton and Durham special. One unit upstairs, one unit in the basement. It's quite simple. It's easy. That's kind of what I call an income property. And then we have your triplexes and fourplexes, and then it's everything above 5 and more. And the reason we've categorized it that way, not to say it's the right way necessarily, it's just been right for us and for our clients to kind of understand it, is because when you have 5 doors or more, the financing changes, right? People are definitely gravitating to that more. I actually think it's even a possible better investment overall and over time than pre-construction, than a condo. Again, I'm only talking about facts, black and white numbers. A freehold home, a building with 8 units is going to appreciate more than my 1-bedroom condo, period. It's just a little tougher to get into. And now you have 5 tenants or 8 tenants. You can hire a property manager. So there is benefits and things to consider on all those types of investments. You just need to find out what's easier for you. So for me, brother, I can't put up like a picture on the wall. The team knows, never put a hammer in Jas's hands. I have no clue what the hell I'm doing. I can't fix anything. You know what I mean? I don't also have a lot of time to deal with not only the tenants, but even the property managers, because you got to go through a lot of them to find the right ones, in my opinion. So for me, I'm a very, very boring investor. Let me buy a pre-con. I'm going to sit while it gets built, and then I'm going to rent it out to one tenant, and I'm going to get it in a location. It's going to cost me a little bit more to get in, but I'm going to get a higher class tenant. And I don't know if that's politically correct or not, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for somebody who makes more money than the average income and somebody who has a good, stable job. That's what I'm looking for. And I tell them that when they move in. I don't care how many parties you throw in here. Just pay me on time, bro, and don't damage my place. Throw parties. Have fun. Enjoy. It's my place. It's your place. It's a partnership. Just don't damage the place, because I don't know how to fix things. And then I gotta bring people in.
Yep.
But overall, I mean, you look at a multiplex, 10 units, 12 units, man. I mean, I think those are one of the best types of investments because you got the economies of scale there, right? Like working in your favor, right? Where if one tenant leaves, it doesn't break the bank account. You still got 9 tenants who are paying, where when one of my tenants leaves, I'm vacant. I'm screwed, right? So in terms of cash flow, you're able to also do things to those properties that you can't do to condos. Like you can't go into a condo and really do massive renovations to it because you can't tear down walls. You got to go through the corporation. There's just a lot more involved. So it's very rare that it happens. You can put lipstick on the kitchen cabinets and stuff like that. But you can go into a multiplex, literally rip out all the units, start new, right? And then, but on the flip side, with a pre-construction, in Ontario, as the way it sits right now. I can increase because my buildings are built after 2018. Not all my investments are, but these new pre-constructions, obviously, that I'm getting are. I can increase the rent to whatever market rent is, right? Where the other ones, they're still grandfathered in when I think it just got announced it's 2.5%.
I think so, yeah.
Right? And so, I mean, that's not even keeping up with inflation, so that's unfortunate.
Last question I want to talk to you about. So you have your own podcast. I know the format has changed recently, but a couple of years ago, you had some really big names on it. Gary Vee was one of them, Grant Cardone, a couple other people. But just out of curiosity, how did you end up with those relationships? How did you end up having them on your podcast?
Just it's kind of been, the story of my life, man. I am a machine when it comes to following up. And it doesn't matter from what angle. I mean, sales, one-on-one with clients, with other agents, staff that I really want to hire, pretty much how I found my wife. It's all the same. And so I reached out to Gary, to Grant, Patrick Bet-David, Robert Kiyosaki, one of my favorite guests. He's passed away, so rest in peace. Bob Proctor, who's somebody that I learned a lot from when I got into the realm of personal development, kind of in my early 20s. It probably took, on average, those names that I just gave you, on average, about 8 months of follow-up.
But that's like...
months, which means, sorry, really quickly.
Yeah.
One of them, I can't remember... but it was like maybe like a month.
Yeah.
Out, got in. Like outreach, got the person. Where someone like Gary and Grant Cardone, I think it was like a year and a half of follow up. So I'll follow up until someone says, "F off, you're annoying," and I don't get to the annoying part, but I probably tread the line.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you probably didn't have their direct contact info, so you were following up with an assistant or somebody, right? I would think.
Yeah. Every situation's different. I mean, I'm very, for somebody who can't really fix things, I think that is definitely, a weakness to a lot of people. But what comes on the flip side of that, in my opinion, is a very massive strength, which is I'm very resourceful. So I can't edit any of these things. I don't even know what you guys do with turning them on, like these mics, like all these things that you have. But there's just no way that I'm not going to be able to do it as well. In terms of, I'll find somebody who can.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So being resourceful is we're talking about the kids. That's a skill I'm trying to teach them, because people are going to say no. You're not going to like things. It's not going to go out. It's not going to work out your way. You have to figure out a way to get it done. So what I would have done in those cases where I didn't even I had no direct numbers for anybody. I didn't even have the assistant sometimes. Bro, I just would creep them on Instagram, and if I knew the person, I learned quickly on Instagram, for example, if you go into someone's DM, even if you've never DM'd them before, it tells you if they're active. It says active now. Okay. That means they're online. They're in their platform. They're in the Instagram platform. And I would just hit them up. I would try to hit them up, and nothing happened over time. If I show you my phone now and I show you messages with Gary Vee, there's 99% of them never got answered, because he probably gets 1,000 a day.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But then one did. And he's like, "Oh, thanks, man." I was like, really quickly, how do I ever, who can I email to possibly get you on the podcast?
Yeah.
And he told me whoever, and sent out the email. Took 7 months from there to actually make that one happen.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right? Grant, I remember the most because it was a year and a half, and twice he said no. It was at, no, I'm never doing this. He changed assistants. And then the assistant, this new assistant, just kind of made it happen.
Yeah.
And there's no way that he would have remembered that he said no a couple of times,
Yep.
right? The other big one that people usually talk about is Patrick Bet-David, because he's so big now. When I got him, he didn't have the awareness that he has now. So you get lucky with that as well. But to any podcast host, including yourself, what I would say is just continuously reach out, man.
Yeah.
Because the worst someone's going to say is, the worst they're going to say is F off, stop.
Yeah.
And then you stop. Everything else in between is just a not yet.
Yeah.
It's just a not yet.
It's just, if you're in sales, you're used to it anyway, right? You get
skin, right?
people say no to you all the time.
All the time.
But that's awesome that you had Gary Vee in person. I saw that. You were sitting right across from him. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, man. We got to spend, I don't think he knew I was from Rexdale because he said, after we'd done the podcast, he said to myself and my two business partners now, Simos and Laura, and our videographer at that time, he's like, just hang out here, man. Like, talk to some people, hang out. And I was like, for how long? He's like, whatever you want, man. Just chill. And he didn't know I was from Rexdale, so meaning that I stayed there for like 8 hours because then I got to speak to all his videographers, all his editors, other people on his team, but it was the editing team I needed to really get to because they taught me something, which is, I put it out to everybody else now as well. And he's said, like, I'm okay with you talking about it kind of thing, which is the process of taking a 40-minute conversation like this. I in my brain, I see now about at least 100 pieces of content. Mm-hmm. And my team and I, we use a word called rinsing. Like if you have a 30-minute conversation, 45, whatever today's is, you should be able to, with help, get to about 100 pieces of content. You should be able to rinse 100 pieces of micro content out of this macro piece. Mm-hmm. It's why what you're doing is brilliant because you're taking the time. I'm doing pretty much the heavy lifting. You know what I mean? Like the guest is always, and I mean that not in a negative way. Like I have guests as well, but yet the amount of content you're going to get from this, as much as you choose to, blogs, graphics, little video clips, just the audio, it goes on and on and on. And so that's what they taught me, how they do it. And it just changed the course of my life, not my business only. It changed the course of my life.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really, really cool that you got to absorb that information from Gary. And I know you said you have to stop at this time, so I don't want to keep you. But just to finish things off, do you want to tell people how they can reach you, best way to contact you?
Look, man, I'm not that hard to find, man. Just Google me. Go to Google, type in my name, Jas Takhar. I'm sure one of my top sites will kind of come out there. You figure out for yourself how you want to consume me, through video, through audio. Maybe it's the written word, and maybe there's nothing I want to consume from this guy ever again, and that's okay as well. Some will, some won't. So what?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, for being on the podcast today, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Your support is truly appreciated. And if you can share this with a friend or family member that might benefit from the information, remember, our goal is to motivate and inspire others to take action and to build wealth and to become well off. Enjoy the rest of your day.